Lieutenant Relia. The gates had to hold. Lieutenant Relia of the Crown Watch grimaced. Any other day she would have been up at dawn, briefing her sergeants and overseeing the day's assignment before heading to the training grounds to teach the rookies how to think and fight on their feet. But this wasn't a normal day. The enemy was on their doorstep. Let's just get on with it. The Crown Watch had been in their defensive lines all morning, waiting. They'd stood in tense silence as the sky darkened with storm clouds, listening to the clans work themselves into a battle frenzy beyond the walls. As the chants grew louder, Relia turned to reassure the infantrymen to her right with a hard smile. This would be her first time seeing combat, and he looked a bit lightning tore through the sky, shattering the gate in a roar of primal fury. Before she even felt the sting of the splintered wood, Relia heard herself shout, "Shields up!" Arrows rained down and the horde poured into her city. The fighting was a cacophony of bellows, drums, horns, and the crash of metal on metal. The clans attacked without discipline, a relentless wave of spears, axes, and magical blasts. Relia cut down a mace-wielding berserker and felt a surge of pride as she saw the line of emerald capes and gleaming armor turn back the initial assault. There was little time to celebrate, however, as fresh foes joined the melee. "Hold the line!" Relia barked, stepping back and raising her shield. But there was no one to her right for her to lock shields with. Relia turned to see the legionnaire who had stood next to her just a moment before, fleeing. He wasn't the only one. As the clans swarmed into Argentport, terror gripped many of the recruits and conscripts, and, one by one, they ran. The gate must hold. Relia turned, tightening her grip on her sword as the enemy charged again. The choice to enlist had been a simple one. Relia wanted to help. She wanted to make her city better. The Argentport she had known was vibrant, a beacon of wealth, power, and culture. That was the city and the people she loved. The moment she was old enough, she had joined the Crown Watch, doing her part to keep Argentport safe. There was a time when the Crown Watch would have marched out to meet any threat. But the Crown Watch at the gate this morning was a shadow of its former self. Worse yet, the devastation hadn't started with a battle today, but the rebellion. Relia had watched horrified as green hellfire roared through half the city, consuming rebel, soldier, and civilian alike. The city had survived, victorious, but it was a victory tinged with mourning. She found herself in that part of Argentport now, a burnt, rubble-strewn scar that had not yet been rebuilt. Relia was exhausted. Her armor had been dented and beaten, and her left arm was numb from a blow that had shattered her shield. The Crown Watch had fallen back and fallen back, trying to slow the endless waves of their attackers, until there was no one left, and nowhere left to turn. Now barbarians rode through the streets unopposed. First, Roland and the rebellion, then the Cabal and their crimes, and now Eileen had returned to savage the city. Why would you fight to protect something that seemed so determined to harm itself? Clan horns echoed through the smoke-choked alleys as Relia let her dented helm clatter to the cobbled street. The fight that morning had been desperate, but the roar of early battle had by now given way to the rough sounds of individual skirmishes and the cries of the wounded and dying. Her hair was matted to her skull with sweat and blood from a shallow cut above her eye. When did that happen? Relia's shoulders burned at the thought of raising her sword again, but her grip remained tight. Everything hurt, most of all the knowledge that they had failed. The city had been taken. Shouting. There, in the city of a storefront half a block away, a family cowered. 2 brutish clansmen loomed over them. Relia's training and her oath carried her forward without hesitation. Her muscles screamed under the weight of her armor. "It only takes one," she thought. "Just one to stand when the others falter." Relia charged. Her pauldron slammed into a startled barbarian's ribs, sending him sprawling. The other one cursed, turning to slash at her with a hatchet. Relia slapped the strike aside with her blade, opening up a sharp cut across his chest. The barbarian roared in pain, landing a heavy blow on her jaw. She staggered back, but kept her sword raised. The barbarian charged, consumed by his fury. Relia stepped past another wild blow and sank her sword into his chest. His dead weight tore the blade from her grip, wrenching her arm sideways with a sickening snap. She danced backwards as the first warrior came at her with his sword. She raised her broken right arm, crying out in pain as the blade scraped along the edge of her gauntlet. Before her attacker could recover, she launched herself forward and felt the crunch as her forehead met his nose. He hit the ground again, and Relia kicked the sword away from his hand with an armored foot. The man considered his options, spat, and fled. Relia turned to the family in the doorway, their eyes wide. "I thought the crown watch was broken," one of the men said, holding his husband and daughter close. "Not everyone," Relia panted, wiping blood from her face. "Not yet. Find somewhere quiet and safe." The man nodded, and they ran. The sky above the spire churned with serpents. Even the Valkyrie had withdrawn. Fires throughout the city lit the clouds overhead in a furious orange. Argenport had fallen. In the smoky distance, a woman screamed. Relia clenched her fist, wincing as pain radiated up her injured sword arm. She'd never be able to lift a blade, let alone fight. She looked up the street and caught a brief glimpse of the shopkeeper's family ducking into an alley. "It only takes one," she said aloud. Then she picked up her sword with her left hand. Its weight felt strange, awkward. "It will do. It has to." She ran towards the fighting. Chapter 20. Spoils of War. Cities don't stop. Any good business person knows that cities cannot grind to a halt because the throne lies empty or the enemy marches in. Thousands of citizens still have to get on with the business of living, no matter what flag flies overhead. Argenport depends on trade, from grain and livestock to steel and shiftstone. The remnants of gates that once held back armies now open hurriedly for farmers, merchants, and profiteers from all over Myria. "You there, young miss, yes you, with the, bear." The tiny merchant stood on a high stool, waving over the counter to get her attention. Svetya grinned when she heard his voice falter. With a whisper and a tug on his reins, her mount, Mochnadi, turned and lumbered towards the merchant's stall. Her guard followed, the crowd parting as citizens hurried out of the way. "Are the clans citizens of Argenport now?" Svetya wondered, sliding off Mochnadi to the cobbles far below, or the other way around. The tinker eyed the large white bear warily, his heavy goggles making him look all the more startled. He recovered quickly, however, and gave Svetya a wide smile. "Ah, miss, I can tell you are a woman of taste. Can I interest you in the mechanical marvels of Winchest? Arms and armor fit for the crown watch, or whatever's left of it." He leaned in close, his high voice dropping to a faux whisper. "And with the iron fist gone, would you care to learn the secrets of flight? Many marvels can be yours, if you have the coin for them." He waggled his eyebrows, expecting Svetya to be impressed. The Orine wasn't. She was here for an army, not artifice. "Can your contraptions make Mochnadi fly?" she asked. The bear chuffed eagerly at his name, and the tinker blanched, his tail curling in fright. "Well," he stuttered, it would have to be a custom rig, which can be very expensive and Svetya nudged Mokonati with her heel, and he growled, lazily baring his teeth. The merchant squeaked in fear and fell off his stool. Svetya's laughter carried over the hubbub of the market. "This city is lovely," she thought, "but I have promises to keep back home. I must speak with the new queen." Curios from the desert, lost wonders of past ages recovered at great risk, the vendor shouted, gesturing at the collection of the strange items spread over her blanket. Some were gleaming metalwork, while others were made of smooth, time-worn glass, charms to ward off all manners of ills, antivenoms of every flavor, all from lost Relia. "Why is it lost?" The merchant turned, causing her wares to shift and glint in the midday sun. A young boy no older than 11 stood at the edge of her blanket. He looked thin and dirty. "Where are your parents, little one?" the merchant asked, her voice quieting. They're not here. They're lost too," he replied, matter-of-factly. "They told me to stay in the basement and not come out, no matter what I heard." The merchant blinked, then reached into a pouch on her waist, withdrawing a handful of dried dates, which she held out. The boy tiptoed through the bottles and jewelry, and snatched the proffered food from her hand. As he ate, the merchant's eyes flicked around the crowd. No one else was paying her or her goods much attention. She leaned towards the boy, half whispering through her headscarf, "Perhaps Relia is not lost as much as it is hard to find. The desert winds can hide many treasures." The boy nodded, still gnawing on fruit. "That sounds nice. Can I come?" Looking him in the eyes, the merchant said, "Only the bravest adventurers find the lost city. So I have no doubt we will meet again there one day." The boy beamed, and the merchant reached down to pluck a small object from her blanket, pressing it into a sticky palm. "Here. This is a lucky stone. The shadows grow long, and this may yet hold them back." The boy nodded severely. "Thank you, ma'am. I need to keep looking now." The merchant returned the nod, her lips tight, and watched as the boy vanished into the crowds of Ardjaport, clutching the waystone pebble tightly. Some merchants prefer to have a bit more space. This stall was larger, sitting beneath a ragged blood-red awning. The proprietor reclined lazily in her chair, calling out with a smooth patter, "Swords, guns, grenades, all from the fabled gunsmiths of Ixtun. Arm yourself, friends, and feel safe again." A large, battle-scarred man, clad in leather and mail, swaggered over, a long-necked bottle in one hand. He ran a callous eye over the display, then demanded, "That tinker run across the plaza will sell me a magic stick that zaps anyone I touch. And the woman with her blanket has a scarf that holds a whole storm. Why should I care about what you're selling?" The merchant tilted her head, eyeing him up and down like something for sale. "I'd have expected a man like yourself to know the difference between toys and a weapon," she said flatly, picking up a heavy pistol. The gun whirled in her hand, a dizzying glint of spinning silver that ended with a sharp crack. The bottle in the mercenary's hand exploded. He stood open-mouthed. The merchant hadn't moved, but was wreathed in shiftstone smoke from the gun. "I do not sell dusty relics or dainty machines. I sell weapons, keenly sharpened and fully loaded. If you seek to do harm or to prevent harm done to you, you will always find an ally in Ixtun." She settled back into her chair. The man burst into joyous laughter. We'd have made a killing if you and I had been here when the rebellion came to town. They were a few good bullets away for putting an end to this whole thing before it ever got started. It's a pity." Beneath her broad-brimmed hat, the merchant raised a single eyebrow. "For a group that got blown to hell and back, the rebels' gold still seems real enough to me." The mercenary's eyes widened in surprise. "The rebellion survives?" The merchant nodded with a slow smile. "Aye, though I don't know where you heard such dangerous talk. Azalia's son has taken up his father's cause, motivated by grief, I have no doubt." Scratching his beard, the mercenary smiled. "Grief, huh? Sounds profitable." He dug a gold coin out of his belt and flipped it to her. "Thanks for the tip." The merchant caught the coin and touched it to the brim of her hat. "Indeed," she agreed, "on both counts." Rubies glinted on their leather cords as the blue-clad merchant gestured with her necklace-laden arm. Her voice rang out. "Mysteries from the top of the world, shamanic staves, potions to withstand the cold, tomes of Jotun prophecies to predict your future, all for fair prices, and all available today for the last time in Argenport." "Scared to stick around when things get a bit rough, eh?" a bystander asked. The merchant looked at him warily. "This one wants trouble." The man noticed her gaze and continued, "Well, I think it's shameful. Coming into our city, selling us stuff from the clans. Outsiders getting rich off of the war they had no part in." His voice grew louder with each accusation, and a crowd began to form. The merchant cleared her throat and said carefully, "I see no war here, only unease and misunderstanding. Besides, Nev takes no part in this. I am merely a traveler." "Oh yeah?" the tough asked, voice still booming. "And that makes it okay for you to stroll in here and sell to our invaders, eh? After Argenport bled, trying to keep itself free." There were some shouts of "Yeah!" from the surrounding crowd, and the merchant gulped. Doing her best to steady her voice, she murmured, "Truly a marvel of medicine, not even a scar." The man grimaced. "What did you say?" "Your wounds," the merchant pressed on, aware that she had only a few moments before the crowd hardened into sides. "They have healed you. You must tell us. Which master apothecary treated you, that you stand before us without a mark upon you from the fighting?" The big man glared. "Why, you mouthy little," the man growled, but merchant shouted over him, "For surely one as strong, healthy, and able as you were not among the cowards who hid in dark holes when the clans swarmed through the streets." A gasp ran through the crowd, followed by many low mutterings. The merchant heard someone say, "She's right," as the crowd's attention shifted to the muscular man. His eyes flicked around, and he jabbed a meaty finger at the merchant. "Damned mountain folk, you're all the same," he shouted, before turning and shoving his way through the crowd. The merchant felt her pulse lessen, and finally relaxed. "Rubies, ladies and gentlemen. Tomes of prophecy. Get them here." Tensions were bad before, she thought as she made change for a curious customer, but things are getting worse. Not all deals happen in large market squares. Sometimes for discerning customers with specific needs, the best bargains can be struck in Argenport's winding alleys. You just need to say the right things to the right person, and with illicit deals come illicit whispers, if you know how to listen. "Ah, Signer, so good to see you again. I have a fresh cask, direct from Carendon." The merchant's voice is smooth, comfortable in the shadows. The other party to this transaction clears his throat nervously. Oh, yes, so glad you're here. I was worried the fighting had, well, scared you off. The merchant chuckled. A low sound devoid of humor. The Crown Watch know enough to keep to the streets. The alleyways and dark corners were never theirs. Now these stinking clansmen will learn the same. There's the light clink of delicate glass and the glug of heavy liquids. In the family, we have a saying, a cutthroat teaches best. The buyer is startled. Yes, quite. I certainly have no love for our occupiers, nor their barbarous queen. Goodness, the merchant purrs. Treason? From a man as rich as yourself? I would have thought the high and mighty of Argenport were happy to be done with an iron fist and his inquisitions. Bah! Roland may have been overzealous at times, but at least he kept the streets clean. The buyer realizes what he's saying, flusters and stammers. Clean of those rebel scum, I mean. Roland's Valkyries kept order inside the walls. Now, I don't know if I can say the same. He looks around and lowers his voice. It might be treason to say, but I would have preferred Caiaphas's son. A noble lad, just like his father. No barbarian blood muddying things up. Alas, the treaty with the clans handed the throne to his daughter with Eileen. Good riddance to her. However, and here he leans in whispering, I hear Eileen has disposed of Caleb, tidying up loose ends. Something you know about, yes, the merchant says, his grin gleaming from the shadows. The other man flushes red, clutching his ill-gotten balls to his chest. What? No, I don't know what you mean. Talk like that will lose you a customer. The merchant raises his eyebrows. Clarendon chooses purveyors carefully. No one else has what I have. As long as your pockets are heavy with coin, you will be back for your bottles. As rich man sputters and flees the alley, the merchant laughs to himself. The new queen brings discontent and danger, eh? Business has never been better.